Hello, everybody. Hello, friends. Welcome to a new episode of Merging Minds powered by BureauWorks. I am excited today to be here with James Brown, Jamie Brown, right? I hope he was the famous singer, but so far it's only one of my favorite leaders in the industry, right? James is an amazing professional. For those of you who know him, he's been in the industry for quite some time. He's been leading teams in localization. He's been leading localization teams in companies such as the What Three Words. He was director of content operations at Buzoo, and now he's a localization consultant. Jamie is based in Windsor, outside of London, and today I have him here with us so he can share his life experience. He can share his localization consultant, his localization experience, and hopefully we all can learn a little bit from him today. Hi, Jamie. How are you
Hi,
doing?
yeah, really well. How are you doing?
I'm good. As I told you when we were starting to record, I am traveling the world. I'm stoked. I don't have a place to live, so I'm just jumping around every place I can. Now I'm in the United States. I'm in New York.
New York is a great place to be. Very jealous.
Yeah. Still have another 10 days here, so it's gonna be fine. And we're recording today in April 2024. So let's see where I am in April 2025, right? Can you tell us a bit about your background, my friend? Like, you have a very interesting life experience, and people really, I think our listeners would really like to know about it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think so. I've had a fairly varied path to where I am now. I didn't start out in the localization industry at all. My university degree was in classical music. I worked in the opera industry for a while. I worked on a stable yard. I lived in Brazil and worked in a school. Done all sorts of things, and then in my early 30s, I started working with what was at the time a very new and unknown startup in London called What Three Words. And, my career grew with those guys. And I worked with them for about 10 years, heading up their language and localization program. And then, yeah, fast forward to now, as you say, I'm sort of drawing on my experiences with What Three Words and with some other companies as well. And I've just become a freelance localization and language consultant. So that's
That's very
fine.
interesting, and it's very interesting because almost everybody we talk, who we invite here in Merging Minds in our podcast, is somebody that is from somewhere that has studied something, a whole different thing, and just landed in this industry by pure chance. Yeah, and
I know,
it's
right? Yeah, I think it's really interesting. There are so many people in the localization industry that have that sort of varied career path. And I think, potentially it's what gives us our sort of curiosity about the world and about people and culture and language. We're all people that have that curiosity. So I think that could be what
it's
binds us, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You totally said it. Like we get to live in this circle and have these friends, and that's all international. And when you think about it, it's like it's not everybody there, right? And it's funny that you said it because I also come from this background. I studied law, and I also had this sort of like complete jobs that had nothing to do with our industry, and I ended up tour guiding as well 10 years ago before entering the industry. Just like you, I love opera. Like I was doing a lot of tour guiding in Germany, in the region of Munich and Bavaria. And I got a lot into the Wagner operas thanks to visiting this castle that's up in the Alps, the Neuschwanstein Castle. And I had this thing of starting to travel between Budapest, Munich, Prague, and Vienna to see the Wagner's operas. And I got a really cool follow it. I mean, I follow it on that stuff like a lot. Like so, actually, my Instagram is low and green.
Oh, cool, isn't it? Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, like also I think music and language, obviously there's such a huge overlap there as well. Music is a language. It's a means of communication, and it's one that you can do, with people who don't speak the same language as you. So yeah, I'm not surprised. Like so many linguists are also musicians, or
Yeah.
the other way around. So yeah.
So, Jamie, can you name a few quirks about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So like I said before, my first training was in classical music, and I actually trained as a composer first and foremost. I wrote music, so this is something that I've picked up and down really over the last 20 years since I was at university. But something I'm doing at the moment, a big project that I'm working on, is writing music for choirs in languages that classical music audiences might not necessarily be used to hearing in the concert hall. So trying to find lots of interesting languages that I can write music in, just to bring that into more people's lives.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's very interesting. Keep it up and show me some of those next time we meet. Okay.
I will try, yeah, for sure.
How was your growing up? Tell us a little bit about your growing up and how you decided to enter this industry and how it came. Like, did it come by chance? Did it come you found it and entered it? How was it?
it's it's an interesting one actually. So as a child, I had quite a pronounced stammer. I still do now to an extent. It's less pronounced than it was when I was a child. You know, growing up in school, I really would never have spoken out loud in classroom. It was often, you know, even just a struggle to say my name in like the morning register when you had to say if you were in school or not. So that had like a huge effect, I guess, on my relationship with communication and relationship with languages. But on the other hand, I was actually really interested in language. So I studied French at school. You know, obviously, I was much happier when I was doing the reading and the writing and the listening than I was when I was having to speak it out loud. But I did really enjoy it, but I just always sort of assumed that languages and the language industry was something that I wasn't going to be able to access for myself. However much I was interested in it, it just wasn't something that was for me. As a person with a stammer. So I, you know, like I said, I pursued other avenues. I became a musician. I worked in the opera industry. You know, had a really great time. As often happens with people that have a stammer, as an adult, it started to become slightly less pronounced. And you know, I did a few things. I moved to Brazil. I learned Portuguese, and that process of like being complimented on my proficiency with a language was something that was actually really unusual to me because I've always had this sort of anxiety around speaking.
Yeah,
And, you know, I just sort of progressed and, you know, my relationship with my stammer became better. And all of a sudden I thought, do you know what? I've always wanted to be a linguist. I've always wanted to be involved with languages, and maybe now is my time. So I seized the opportunity, did a master's in linguistics, and then through pure chance, really landed the job at What Three Words in its very early stages, working on like a huge program of language research, localization. It's all super interesting. So yeah, like most people, I guess, who are in the language industry, it was a winding path, but an interesting one.
yeah, yeah. And I love it, and that I really appreciate that. I particularly like a lot operas and classical music and museums, art, etc. Right? That part of the academia in your background, it helped you being where you are today now, right? Like, how would you say that helped you today? What inspires you, or what makes you think, oh my God, this part is so inspiring for what I do now?
Yeah, exactly. You know, I think one step that I missed out actually from my career path, because there's so many others apart from the ones I told you. Um, but I worked in a couple of universities in the UK for a while, one in London and then the University of Oxford. And I think the kinds of people that I met there and that I worked with, they just have this like lust for information and to learn new stuff and to understand stuff that they don't understand yet. And that's really infectious. And I sort of grew off that, I think. And, you know, I know how much there is to learn about languages and communication and culture, and not one person is ever going to know all of it. But, you know, sort of the driving force really behind my love of languages and localization is really that like desire to understand people and to understand
Yeah.
their languages, and like, just like the little quirks that people can't really explain, but you just kind of have to try to get to the bottom of it. So
Yeah,
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 that's
I
really
get it.
interesting.
I get it. I appreciate it. That's super interesting. That's really the beauty of all the people in the industry, that we bring things from everywhere, and we are the mixed mash of all of that, right? I've been training a lot, and this was probably through I've trained a lot, and I don't feel uncomfortable. I actually like it to speak in public, right? I lost the fear for speaking in public when I was a tour guide in Munich, in which you had to be in the middle of the square of Munich, shouting at 150 people to telling them, "Hey, come here, come there," organize groups and stuff like that, and then doing them several tours around the city. Right? You've been
Mm.
engaged in public speaking, right? You've actually done a TED talk, right? That is available out there in public. Can you tell me a bit about that? What
Yeah,
inspired you?
I did a TEDx talk a couple of years ago now in London. It was awesome. Like you, I really like public speaking. I think for me, as somebody with a stammer, I think I really get a kick out of being able to speak in public and to kind of have people listen to what I have to say. And I love communicating a message in a way that people engage with and that they find interesting and understand. And I guess working at What Three Words, it's such a interesting company and it's got such a unique story, and the product is such a brilliant idea that people love to hear about it. And
Mhm.
so I was asked to do a TEDx talk about, what three words and languages and all kinds of things. And yeah, it was a brilliant experience, walking out on stage in front of 800 people and just have them listen to me for 20 minutes was awesome.
Did you get scared at the beginning at least, or never? Or it's like, I believe in, like, I always have this feeling of when you were going to school or to university and you had a very difficult exam to pass, right? And then you had this, like, I call them pre-exam nerves, which once you get the questions and that you've studied, if you haven't studied, you don't have to be nervous, of course. But then once you're in front of the paper, as I said, and you know everything, okay, the nerves disappear or the anxiety disappear, right? Did this happen to you too there? Like, because
Yeah, absolutely. I think preparation is so key, isn't it? Like with an exam or with public speaking or with anything, like in that pressure situation, you just have your preparation to fall back on. I walked out on stage and instantly wasn't nervous, like because I knew that it was going to go well because it had been so many months in the making, and I'd worked with this incredible speech coach, which was such an awesome experience. And yeah, I just knew that it was going to be good. So
okay, well, let's see, let's see. I hope
yeah,
one day I can give a TED talk too.
yeah, no, you
And
should.
yeah, no, it's very interesting. I could talk about this with you like for an hours, but I wanna like when I spoke to you before we doing this podcast, we were talking about your leadership experience, and one of the missions that I have in the industry was that I really want to go hard on is like promoting a modern human leadership, right?
Mm,
And you've been leading teams for 10 to 15 years, correct,
yeah,
more or less,
yeah.
right? Uh, tell us. I want you to tell me a little bit about like some key experiences or milestones that shaped your career in leadership, and what have made you have the leadership philosophy that you have today.
Yeah, interesting one. So, yeah, I guess part of my role at What Are Three Words, one of the brilliant things about starting a job in a startup in their very, very early stages is that you get to grow with the company. And I started as employee number 5, I think. By the time I left, there were 160 people in maybe 6 offices, all like all over the world. And so not only did I grow with the company, but I grew my team with the company as well.
Yeah,
And I was really fortunate to have, the support of senior leadership in the company who recognized how important languages and localization was for a company that had words at its heart, but also who, you know, had ambitions of going global, of being used in every single country in the world. Like they knew how important localization was to that mission. So I was able to grow my team and, ended up with 6 people at one stage that I was managing. And I think when you're building a team, I think looking at how that team works with each other and how they feed off each other and what sort of complementary skills they have, and how their personalities are going to work together, I think that's really key. I listened to one of your podcasts actually recently, and I heard you make the analogy of a team being like a football team, and that you need your goalkeeper, you need your defenders, you need your midfield and strikers, and I completely adhere to that as well. I think it's so important to have that sort of breadth of people, and to not fall into the trap of recruiting people that all like yourself, because that's not
Yes.
the way that a strong team is going to work, I think. So sort of having that overall vision of what you want to do and all of the various skills that you're going to need. And also I think to be humble enough to admit that, lots of those skills are ones that you don't have yourself.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
yes, so you hire people that can do things that you can't do, and that's okay. And you kind of nurture them and empower them to do those things and to do them really well and to take them to places that you'd never dreamed of taking them yourself. So
yeah.
yeah, I think that's really crucial. But like I think also with a diverse team with lots of different people and skills in it, I think it's really important as the manager to remember that everybody in that team is a human being, and not only are they bringing something different to your table, but you should, as a manager, be able to bring something different to each of them as individuals, right? Because everybody needs something different from their team, from their company, from their manager. They're all looking at you to provide something that's like bespoke to them, and you can't try and do a one management size fits all approach to having a team, because it's just not going to get the best out of people, I think.
This is it's very interesting, Jim. In what you said now about what impacted me most of what you said now is like how you were able to get what impacted what how you were able to get that support from senior leadership, right? In order to build your team, to make them do their work and develop in the way you wanted, right? And one of the things that I find myself always in when I meet with people and when I talk to people is the difficulties management or a leader like you has or have in our industry to get the support from above, whether it's, I mean, I know your particular experience in this company was you were the fifth co-worker there, so probably it was like you know them all from the beginning. But what were the things that you used to like if imagine that you have to join a very big corporation and it's more difficult to, what were some of the things that you would apply in that case based on what you've learned in the role you were before?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because I guess, one of the things about my job at What Few Words is that I ended up as a Chief Language Services Officer, and I was on the senior management team, alongside the CEO, the COO, the CMO, CTO, all those Cs. And then there was me, and um, it's quite an unusual position, I think, for somebody in our industry to be in, to be sort of such a sort of integral part of the very core of a company. So, like for a start, I thought that was a huge privilege, but it was really interesting to be able to see the ways that I could add value to that team. And the sort of insights that I had into globalization and localization and all the rest of it.
Mhm.
So I think going into a new, larger company, I think, take those skills, understand what it is that you can bring to a company, and just be very good at explaining to people, what the value of localization is. And I think that's a real key part of our industry, isn't it? People understanding what the value of their job is, and it's only with that that you really feel empowered to go that extra mile and to suggest stuff that hasn't been on the table before, and use your unique vision to help larger companies grow internationally, which I think is a great thing to do. Almost like with having a team, there's one team that you manage, but there's also your team, which is the wider company. And remembering that not everybody um, learns in the same way. Not everybody wants the same kind of information. So, like, kind of learning to adapt your message according to the people that you're speaking to at the time. I'm a huge believer in a data-led approach, and finding those people that also love the data, and then being able to show them the way that localization adds value and creates impact. I think is really important. But then other people prefer a more narrative approach uh, to how things are progressing. So it's about looking at that as well, I think.
By what you describe, I think that you are in the same mission, a similar mission as me, to promote a more human leadership way of leading teams, right? I so you were gonna say?
No, I was going to say, yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's such a important thing. And all of the best leaders that I've ever worked with are just intrinsically human, and they get it, and they understand, how to inspire teams, and how to be transparent, and how to be visionary, and how to bring people on the journey with them. And that's completely down to people skills, I think.
You mentioned right now that you were trying to adapt your speech to whoever you were talking to, right?
Yeah.
To me, that's the summit, and it's not so often seen of being empathetic and having a certain high level of emotional intelligence, right? So
Mm.
in this kind of leadership that I was mentioning, that I'm always trying to promote this more human centered, more approach, like more human approach, right? What role do you think that empathy and emotional intelligence have played in you in the way you've done things so far?
I think it's huge. I think I'm very much a believer in somebody who feels well supported and feels that their manager gets them and who they are and what they want to do and what they want to achieve. I think those are the people that you are going to get the best work out of, hands down, every time. And so I think, understanding that, and understanding where somebody wants to go and what doors they might want to be opened up in their future as well. And, helping them to achieve that, I think, is such a key part of being an effective manager. So, yeah.
So to all the leaders watching, don't forget empathy and emotional intelligence. Okay, promise us. Okay.
Absolutely, please. Yeah.
It's, there's another thing that I always try to. I'm always amazed by the difficulty of it, right? And haven't led many teams yet. If anything, I'm trying to share ideas, more thought leading, etc. But one of the things that really is very challenging for me is taking difficult decisions. Fortunately, I haven't taken many lately. I mean, at a personal level, more than maybe in a professional level. But can you share with us in these terms, like, can you share a challenging decision you've had to make as a leader, and what factors did you consider in the decision making process? Can you share with us some of that?
Yeah, so I guess I'm going to go back to my theme of having a team of individuals, all with different personalities, and I think um, part of the challenge of that is then um, having a cohesive team and making sure that everybody's on the same page and moving towards the same end goal. And when you have brilliant people who all have their way of doing things and have their way of achieving great things, they might, or they do sometimes clash, right? And one of the challenges of being a leader is to keep people on the path and to make sure that any problems within a team are ironed out quickly and effectively, and you know well mediated and handled in a careful and considered manner. So I think certainly, the biggest challenges that I've had as a leader would be around that, and around sort of conflict resolution, I guess, and making sure that everybody feels like their voices have been heard, and the reasons why they reacted in a particular way were understood, and supported, and taken into consideration when the path was eventually chosen, even if it wasn't the one that they'd advocated for in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah. I
Important.
it's that's very interesting and very eye opening. Like, once again, I hope all leaders listening follow some of this advice that you're sharing here with us. I want to ask you as well. Like I think like in these last 15 years, like life and professional life has really exploded. Technology has really is really everywhere. Like you see it in the new technology coming out, in the new trends, in LLMs now, in AI, all of that, right? I think today's world is fast paced, right? So in this world in which you're bombarded with all of this information, all of this technology and stuff, one of the things we try to talk about, and people are trying to talk about a lot, is about how to maintain a healthy work-life balance, right? And leaders tend to struggle with that sometimes, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
fair enough.
yeah. Do you have any? Do you like in your case? What strategies do you employ to prevent the burnout, or to to really make a difference between both aspects?
Yeah, I think that's, like you say, that's a really crucial thing that we really need to be talking about at the moment. And I think, the working week and their pattern of work has changed for so many people in recent years. Obviously, before COVID, we were all commuting into our office 5 days a week, probably, and uh, getting home late and sleeping and getting straight back up and getting straight back into work, and then like absolutely beat at the weekends because you've been working so hard during the week. Um, so I think, partly for me, I think the hybrid approach to working that I see in so many companies at the moment, I think that is one thing that is really helping with that work life balance, and people having a little bit more time at home, a little bit less time on trains. um, I think is really useful. I have a little garden where I live, and somebody said to me recently, when you're having a hard day, if you've got 30 seconds, just take your socks and shoes off and go and stand on the grass in your bare feet, because I swear to God, it'll make you feel better about the world. And honestly, that works. So sorry if you don't have grass close to you, but just that, just being able to be in your home environment and to have something that you're able to do that really sort of reinvigorates or revitalizes you, whatever that may be, I think is really important. But also, as leaders, I think something that I had to learn really, and this is one thing that my team at What a Few Words helped me to learn, and I will always be grateful to them for, pointing it out, is that leaders really have to lead by example. And no matter how much you say to your team, oh, you know, we don't expect you to work evenings and weekends, and if you're offline, you're offline, and I won't expect a response to my message if you're on holiday, or that kind of thing. If you as a leader are doing all of those things and are replying to emails on a Saturday afternoon, and replying to Slack messages at midnight, that isn't setting the best example for your team. And it's so tempting to do it, and we all do it as leaders because we have that relationship with work, and I genuinely prefer to do that than to leave it until the next day or until I'm back from holiday. But I think doing it in a considered way, that being aware of your actions and what impact they have on people who look to you for that leadership or direction. So yeah, practice what you preach, I think,
Yeah.
is a lesson that I learned from my team for sure.
Okay. Okay. That's good. So that's got great advice. Thanks for sharing it. And you mentioned at the beginning that you started recently freelance consulting as a localization in the localization industry, right?
I did, yeah, yeah.
So what's next for you in this path that you just took? What do you expect it to be?
Well, I mean, it's super exciting. I mean, we were saying earlier, if you get the chance to do something that you've always wanted to do, I think it's really important to know that you've done the best you can to achieve that. And I've always wondered what it would be like to be a consultant. I've always wanted to try that path to see how it works, because I know that one of my skills is going into a small organization and helping them do something that they don't know how to do, building a localization program and infusing the whole team, and instilling that love of language and culture and localization into the culture of a company. So I had the opportunity to start that out for myself recently, and it's been a wild ride. Networking, I think you speak my language about networking. You know how important it is, and the opportunities that you can get from speaking to people and making sure that I think you said once, add a new person on LinkedIn every day and talk to them and try and get half an hour in their calendar just to find out about them and what they do. um, I think that's so important. And as a consultant, meeting all those new people and understanding the challenges that people face that you never even realized would be a challenge, and helping them to overcome that, I think is such a rewarding thing. And working with companies and industries that you'd never dreamed of, or that you were really interested in, but you never tried before. I think it's such an interesting way of life, and you get to do so many diverse things in it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
more
I
of that.
agree with you. I totally agree with you. This part of the networking and to making, and maybe it's not for everybody, or maybe some people would say I don't have the time for this. I don't think that's correct. I think there's always time for everything. And then what I always try to is I so brilliant that you just mentioned it, Jamie, because a lot of the times you try to help people, like connecting them with new employers or whatever it is, and then nobody, not a lot of people are prepared to have that network ready when the moment comes to, hey, I don't have a job, I need to
Exactly.
I need to start a business. Where am I going to start now? Hey, you go to your network. I don't have a network. Oh,
Yeah.
so I am very interested and excited that you mentioned this right now, right? So
Yeah, and it happens to everybody. And just people to bounce ideas off. Or I have a few people in my network who, if something weird happens at work, or if somebody says something that I'm like, oh, I don't know how I feel about that. And just be able to ring somebody up who understands your job, understands the industry, understands the way things work, and just say, this thing happened to me today. Has it ever happened to you? What
yeah,
did you do? How did you feel about it? Like, what was the resolution? um, I think that can be super, super useful, particularly as a leader. You don't always have peers that you can have that sort of chat with within your own company, right? Like, particularly in localization, as a buyer in a company, there you don't have people that understand the industry necessarily, that are at your level and that you're able to have these conversations with. So, having a network outside your company and your team and your friends, I think, is so important for your own health as well.
definitely, definitely. Jamie, it's been great to know you. You have an amazing story behind. You are a great leader. Thanks for coming and sharing these things here with us. I just have, like, before we end the podcast, I try to wrap it up asking uh, 4 or 5 super fast questions that you need to reply in 10 seconds, right? And they're not
Okay.
scary. Don't be scared. The first one I want to ask you: what was the last thing you Googled?
The last guy I googled was, it was African languages and AI. So
Wow, wow, that's great. That's a good one.
building AI models for African languages.
Jump back to when you were 12. What did you want to be then?
When I was 12,
Yeah.
I think I probably wanted to be a geography teacher.
Okay, okay, okay. So name a band and a song that define
Oh,
you. Say that again.
um, always Björk.
All right.
And any song you want, pick any of them. They're all as good as each other.
Okay, okay. What is like the biggest myth people believe when it comes to technology? What do you think it is?
There's no humans behind it.
All right, all right, all right. And using only one word, how would you describe the future?
Optimistic.
Optimistic. I love it. Well, thank you very much for being here today, Jamie. It's a real pleasure. And
It's
I
been
want to
so
say,
great.
yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope all our listeners enjoyed this too, because this has been a very insightful conversation from my point of view. And Jamie, I think you want to let us know as well. You're putting out a website right now.
I
Uh,
am. Yep. I'm building it at the moment, but hopefully by the time the podcast is live, so will the site be. It's jamiebrown.info.
All right. So
No
please don't
problem.
hesitate to go visit it, and also connect with Jamie on LinkedIn. Reach out to him. And thanks everybody for being here today. Have a good day.
Cheers, Javi. Thanks so much. It's great to talk.